Hello, my name's Elizabeth Ashley, the Secret Healer. Welcome to my channel, list of essential oils and their uses, and welcome to my garden, to my rose garden. I am the author of the book Rose Goddess Medicine, and I'm here to talk about what does rose essential oil do? Hello, my name is Elizabeth Ashley, the Secret Healer. Welcome to my channel, list of essential oils and their uses. And today's video is entitled, What does rose essential oil do? Well, there's a big question. There is a big question. Now, this is part of a series of videos about rose essential oil. So if you have a look in the description, it will tell you where the others are. We have one that focuses entirely on skincare. We have one that's more of a beginner's one. So if you have never used essential oil, rose essential oil, and you want to know what it's used for, that would be the great one. This one's more of an advanced one where we look at the science of what we know the essential oil does. So let me show you this first of all. This is a rose called Sister Elizabeth, bought for me by my sister. Very, very similar in appearance to the rose that we get rose essential oil from. Not red, not white. Beautiful little pink one. Although I have to say this one has tremendous thorns. The other one does not have big thorns. Let's put it on there. Out of the way. So I think most of us would know now that rose essential oil, its key areas are gynecology. Very, very feminine oil. And I talk about it a lot in my book, Rose Goddess Medicine, because it's been aligned to the female goddesses since the beginning of time. And I will go on to do another video about that. It's used tremendously in skincare. Another one of my books, find the link, but this one is 50 essential oil recipes for skincare for dry skin, because it is for dry skin and normal skin. It's laxative, so self-explanatory. Tremendous for the emotions. It works on the heart chakra, so it's a specific for grief. That would be the first oil I would always go for grief, but any kind of sadness, PTSD, that kind of thing. But also from the other side of things, for love, for joy. Absolutely the most beautiful love elixir. And there's a beautiful saying from ancient Sanskrit saying that says, I think it was by the gentleman whose wife was the first person to create rose water, and he said it brings back withered souls. And I think that's absolutely appropriate. So let's talk about some things more in depth. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about gynecology, because as I say, very feminine oil, but also it works on all the avenues of sexual dysfunction, and that applies to men too. In my rose book, we talk a lot about a fantastic clinical trial that was, if I remember rightly, done jointly between several different labs, particularly in Iran and Switzerland. And they recruited 60 volunteers, men who were taking SSRIs, which are antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, which have the side effect of making you feel of losing sexual function. So that's a terrible side effect, isn't it? How does that not make you any more depressed? So the guys had a mean age of 32. So when you looked at the average across them, they came to an average of 32 years old. And they had questionnaires done at baseline when they were recruited, but also 4 weeks through the trial and 8 weeks through the trial. 2 different questionnaires were taken, one for anxiety and moods, and then the other one was for sexual dysfunction. And the kind of things they were saying that were wrong were erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, no ejaculation at all, loss of libido. So generally not a great picture. I mean, I don't see how they were ever going to get less depressed with that happening. So on the trial, they were given a 17 microgram dose of citronellol. Explain that in a minute. And also that was of in 2 mils a day. So citronellol is a component of rose essential oil. I've done a video that I'll put in the links as well. Do essential oils really work for anxiety and depression? And it's worth watching it from this point of view, because it's quite a scientific video, and it talks about the challenges and pitfalls of using scientific data. So one of them is that drugs companies can't patent essential oils. They're a natural commodity that varies so much based on where they grow, what sort of environment they've grown in. So one of the ways that they get around that is to look at a specific constituent, then try and synthesize that constituent. So this constituent was citronellol. If you smell the essential oil and you know what you're looking for, you can smell the citronellol. It's kind of a lemony fragrance within a geranium fragrance. Beautiful, beautiful. And so, as I say, they were taking this orally, incidentally, 2 millilitres a day. So we're not drinking the essential oil, people, please. We're just thinking about the medicine within the rose. Now, after 4 weeks, there wasn't that much difference, a slight difference in depression and anxiety, but also sexual dysfunction, but similar to, interestingly, the placebo that they'd used as well. So this idea of I'm doing something to get better is actually making me better, even though I'm not taking the real thing. The placebo effect is a very interesting and real phenomena. It's fascinating to somebody like me that mindset has such a big varying. But then at 8 weeks, you should have a look at the book to see the phenomenal difference that there was a complete regainment, whatever that word would be. They had regained most of their sexual dysfunction. Their erections were coming back. They were able to ejaculate. They got the libido back, and of course were feeling better. So that's just the male side, and I find that fascinating because not many people write about rose for men, but we can see that there. But libido, of course, is kind of loss of libido can happen at any time of life to men and women, obviously. But 2 main areas, I think, is after you've had a baby and when you go through menopause. And rose helps with, there's 2 tremendous clinical trials that help us to understand what happens there. So there was a lovely trial done on ladies who had had babies in their first few days of after having the newborns. They were given rose essential oil to inhale. Now, I have to say, I think that this would happen with any essential oil, especially any flowery essential oil, knowing what I do about how it reacts to and makes the oxytocin move in the body. But specifically, rose essential oil is beautiful. And they were giving it to inhale for 6 days. And then their cortisol was assessed. So what's cortisol? So cortisol is a stress hormone. When we're stressed, our amygdala perceives the stress and it sends messages to another part of the brain called the hypothalamus. We're going to talk about the hypothalamus later in more depth, but the hypothalamus sends messages to the pituitary that sends messages then to the adrenals, and the adrenals secrete cortisol right across the body. Now, in all the videos, I make sure that I campaign on behalf of cortisol, because everybody talks about cortisol as if it's a real baddie. But in its natural state, it is an anti-inflammatory hormone. It's there to help your body to fight stress. The problem is, if stress doesn't turn off, so for example, a baby keeps crying. If stress doesn't turn off, then because the body is flooded with cortisol, the parasympathetic system, which is the part of the nervous system that switches everything down, helps you go to sleep, rest and restore, parasympathetic system cannot ask the sympathetic system, the bit that does the stress, to turn off. And so continually we have stress, 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 stress. Now, let me tell you an interesting thing about cortisol. You can see I'm fascinated by this. But my middle child, I have 3 children, a young one and 2 older ones. Middle child is a boy, a man now, with Asperger's syndrome. So when you have Asperger's syndrome, your cortisol doesn't work the same way. So if you are normal, typical, if you're neurotypical, what happens is you get up in the morning, about 30 minutes later, you have this natural spike of cortisol, which is basically that I'm awake now. I can deal with this. Takes about half an hour to kick in. But then through the day it goes down. Doesn't happen if you have Asperger's. You just have straight across. So not everybody else's cortisol works the same way. Now, interestingly, baby's cortisol doesn't work the same way. This spike and down through the day starts when they're about 2. Before that time, what happens is it mimics mum's. So when mum's goes up, so does baby's. So if mum's got natural, normal cortisol secretion, remember sympathetic, parasympathetic, remember, that's got to be right for it to work. But if it is, mum's goes, oh, I've had my coffee, I can manage, and we're getting tired through the day. And baby learns, she's had a coffee, I'll wake up now, I'll play with some beads or whatever, down through the day. What happens then if mum goes, never, please, please stop crying, please stop crying, please stop crying, I can do it because I've been there. Babies goes, why is she upset, why is she upset, why is she upset? It upsets me to even think about it. Now, Rose is proven to stop the cortisol release. Now, on a huge scale, right across the body, that's phenomenal, because that means that it will combat this sympathetic, parasympathetic dysfunction. So at every possible time, Rose goes, okay, it's time to calm down now. You can calm. That saber-toothed tiger's gone, calm down. And sympathetic goes, oh, okay, rest and restore. It's okay, calm down, rest and restore. And your body goes, think about how phenomenally important that is for somebody who has postnatal depression. Really, really important. Now, an interesting thing about cortisol is, or about the sympathetic nervous system really, because remember it's that triggers the cortisol. When you are a baby, your body is in a parasympathetic predominant state. So what does that mean? What it means is most of the time it's in rest and restore. Hence then baby goes, I'm ever so tired, I'm going to sleep. I'm doing something, no, I'm ever so tired, I'm going to sleep. And it has a sleep, and what does it do? It grows, right? So it helps the body to restore, to grow stronger. Parasympathetic dominant. So what happens then as we get older? We become sympathetic dominant. So we find things more stressful, but also naturally, for example, we have raised blood pressure because the sympathetic system does this. It forces the blood pressure up, the blood sugars, the respiration. We go, tiger down there. But naturally our body does it. So think about that then. So what happens when we go into menopause? We are already, nature is already forcing us into a stressed state. And then it takes away our estrogen, which incidentally, not so relevant to this lecture, but it is the molecule of worry. when we haven't got the high levels of estrogen, we worry more. What does that do? Well, triggers the cortisol release factor to make more cortisol, and so then we're going round and round and round. Very, very difficult. Now, whilst there's not that much research into rose with menopause, I can tell you now that every good aromatherapist would go, I'm going rose, I'm going claret sage, probably going geranium and lavender, because those are the key areas. However, there is a lot of research that says if you give a lady who is going through menopause, who has menopausal symptoms, and we'll talk about menopausal symptoms in a minute, but you know what I'm talking about, the mood disorder, the hot flushes, the night sweats, all of those deals, give them regular massage, those symptoms come down. Now, as I say, any good aromatherapist would say, oh, I think I'll use a bit of rose oil. So, that's a good help. But here's an interesting thing about menopause. That culturally, your symptoms are to do with where you've grown up. Very, very weird. So, for example, Japanese ladies don't really have that many symptoms. An English lady who is around about 50 with red hair, hot flushes, night sweats, mood, memory, that's the worst one for me. Loss of libido, all of those things, English symptoms and American symptoms. But if you ask a Japanese lady, she'll go, well, actually, no, mostly I just stopped bleeding. So that's weird. And even weirder is if you talk to a lady who is Mayan, you know, down in parts of Greece and ancient and down in Mexico and South America. I just stopped bleeding. No, I didn't have mood swings. Hot sweats, hot flushes. No. Why? They just don't have them. Now, actually, clinically, the only things that are aligned clinically to menopause are the hot flushes and the night sweats. See, you could say, well, Japanese, that could be explained by how much soy they have in their diet, because soy is a phytoestrogen. So that would bring, that would stop it, because we're putting the estrogen back into the system. But the Mayans, no, they don't eat soy. So here's an interesting thing then, because the Mayans have a very, very different mindset about what it means to be a post-menopausal woman. Most of them get married around about 12 and become baby machines. I'm sorry, but that's a horrible way of putting it. But they have loads of children, predominantly not really even having time to have periods between them. Lots and lots of children. And on the times when they do have periods, society views them as very dirty. They're not allowed to go and see their friends. They're not allowed to go to church. So when you get to, I've stopped bleeding, oh, thank goodness, I'm not worried about losing fertility. I can see my friends. I can go to church. I can do all of those things that my period stopped me doing. And as a society, those ladies, those are crones who are revered. Not like in our society. So is it an emotional thing? Well, that's very difficult to say, isn't it? But if it is an emotional thing, then perhaps that comes from, well, actually, I haven't got any emotional baggage that's going to cause my physical body to have anxious. I'm not anxious about menopause at all. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm not having like, when do we go hot? We go hot when we're frightened, don't we? Or have a panic. And I don't know about you, I've managed to stop my night sweats and hot flushes, but that's another video. But when I had hot flushes, I felt like the walls were coming in. It was a real feeling of anxiety. But we know that massage calms that down. And interestingly, there's a lovely Chinese study that the ladies who had the best effects from their massage were those who were given little home treatments to massage their belly with through every day through the week. And not only did all their symptoms go, but their belly got smaller and their waist size got smaller. And maybe we can explain that by the fact that rose essential oil is proven to affect cortisol, and cortisol is proven to make belly fat cells 4 times the size. Where does it stop? Where does it start? It's truly, truly magical. So if we talk about depression and PTSD, as I say, this would be the first oil I would go to for that. But likewise, anxiety, we've talked about the effects on the cortisol. Of course, that all comes together. If we don't feel stressed all of the time, we feel calmer and more with it. But also, essential oils generally, but in particular, rose, is proven to affect 2 particular areas of the brain. The first is the amygdala. The amygdala is a very, very ancient part of the brain. It's a key part of the limbic system, and it's what perceives fear, danger in particular. And it's supposed to help me remember what I was going to say next, but it hasn't. But also the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is to do with, it has lots of different functions, but in the context of what I'm going to say now, stores memories, right? So it's proven that rose essential oil will help neuroplasticity in the hypothalamus. Elizabeth, what the hell does that mean? Neuroplasticity, neuro, to do with the brain, nerves, nervous cells. Plasticity, regeneration, changing, malleable and flexible. So, in cases of neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, early stages, rose works on the hypothalamus and is proven to help regenerate nerve cells and help them heal, improving memory. Maybe the sniff did work. However, what I will stress here is this is an early stage trial, and while I can't remember exactly, let me see if I can go. Yeah. Oh, rats. I couldn't remember what kind of rodent it was done. So this is on rats. And I mean, the clinical trial that they used in itself is interesting, although cruel, but useful. What they did was they killed some of the brain cells of the rats using scopolamine. Now, scopolamine is interesting anyway, because it's a drug that's used for dizziness and vertigo, and it's made from a constituent that comes from a plant which is deadly, nightshade. One of the side effects of scopolamine is, I always find, is really weird. It's for anxiety, for dizziness and vertigo, and one of the side effects it has is dizziness. I'd be really fed up if they gave me that. But it really doesn't do very much good to the brain cells. So the brain cells were killed off. But then when they gave them the rose essential oil to, I'm just looking at my notes to see if it says, well, it doesn't say how it was, and my notes doesn't say how it was, but I'm pretty sure that they injected it interperitoneally. So injected it into its tummy. So I don't think it was inhalation, to be fair. But the brain got better. Rose oil is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. So one of the key things, we've talked about memory from anyway, but I said to you, my brain, it's not great because of my menopause. The only actual thing that's left and of the symptoms, and it shows no sign of leaving anytime soon, but we're getting rid of everything else. But another thing that would addle the brain over time is dependency. And rose essential oil is fascinatingly useful for helping people withdraw from things like heroin. Yeah, it just is very anti-dependency medicine, and the trials are to do with inhalation. And really, I don't think that probably works on the actual addiction itself. It probably works on the moods that support the addiction. But who cares? Who cares? And I do remember, I don't know, maybe about 3 years ago, I had a message on Facebook from a girl that I went to school with. And she was a lovely girl. And I didn't remember that much about her. I just remembered that she was very small. She was very pretty. She was a tremendous runner. And that was about it. But I was really pleased to have a message off her. And it turned out that she lives not far from me. So we said, shall we meet up? And I said, oh, yeah. So I kind of Facebook stalked her and looked at all the pictures. And I thought, oh, that's weird. Her colouring's changed. She's got much ruddier skin than she had before, because she had quite pale skin like I did, and having dark hair, she had tremendous looks, you know. But anyway, I thought nothing more of it. But when I met up with her, I realised, oh, actually, her skin's really quite changed. And when we were talking, she explained to me why that had happened. So the first thing that I'd said to her was, do you still run? Because she was tremendous. And I was a decent runner, a long distance runner. She was a long distance runner. And there was another girl at school who was extremely good and actually went on to be an Olympic heptathlon gold medalist, who is Denise Lewis. And both the girl and I had beaten Denise at school for different reasons. So, by the by, Denise's skirt fell off in sports day. I beat her because of that. So that is my claim to fame. But this girl actually was good enough to beat her on a regular basis, because Denise was much better at short distances sprinting, but never mind. But this girl was tremendous. And I said, do you still run? And she went, oh, no. As if it was obvious. And I thought, what have I forgotten? She said, do you remember when I was about 13, I had that operation because of my growth? And I'd remembered she was small, but I didn't remember much else. And then when she said, I went, oh, yes, you did. You had calipers put on your legs. So it stopped her running. But I don't think it would ever happen now. But she'd had no counselling for the fact that she could no longer run. They just stopped her and they broke her legs and put her in calipers. And then that was it. And nobody really talked about it again. So she went back to school and we all just carried on as normal. And the poor girl never grieved at all for the loss of something that she was incredibly good at. As I remember rightly, I don't think she was as academically brilliant. She was clever enough, but, you know, that had been her thing and it had gone. And I felt terribly sorry for her. And she said, it's caused me terrible things through my life. And I said, oh, how? And she explained how it had she felt being the reason why she'd become an alcoholic. That there'd been this thorn, and I always talk about the thorn when I talk about Rose. We all have this thorn that creates issues in our tissues, don't we? That thing that we haven't got rid of, that trauma, that festering wound. And it had been left and the tissues had grown over time. But of course it had come back to bite her and she'd become very poorly through drink. And she was really inspirational in the way that she was talking about, she'd gone to AA and she'd done the 12 steps. And she felt that the key to her getting better had been that she had been able to feel that there had been a higher order. And she'd met a lovely man and the two of them had got married and they were both from AA. And she, I think she's probably nearly 10 years sober now, and he's, I think, about 6 years sober, or hopefully that's still the case for them both. But she said that he hadn't really tapped into the higher order thing of the AA steps, and he had found it more difficult because of that. Now, one of the things that we talk about a lot in the book is how Rose helps you connect to a higher order. And on the most basic level, if you look at like ancient Egyptians, ancient Greek, Babylonian, Sumerian, they all use Rose as a way to get in touch with their highest female goddess, whether that would be Astarte, Ishtar, Inanna, Aphrodite, Isis, Venus. All of them are the powerful goddesses of love, creation, and war. So this war thing seems very strange, because now we only think of like Aphrodite and Venus as love, but war. These were war goddesses. And there's a fascinating trial that talks about how Rose is proven to be anti-conflict. Now, as I say, it's ruled by Venus when we look at it in medical astrology. And if you get to learn much about medical astrology, I have some cards, Tongue of the Trees cards that I sell, and there's a database that talks about all the different aspects of the energetics that go with that the essential oils do. So Venus, as I say, is beauty, money, luxury, champagne, chocolates, all of that great stuff. But it tempers the effects of Mars. Mars is war, aggression, motivation, drive, blood, actually. Blood, considering we're talking about menstruation and gynecology, it's blood. Venus tempers Mars. So if Mars is out of control, if we've got too much war, too much aggression, too much conflicts, Venus tempers Mars. It soothes it down. Rose is anti-conflict. Really strange, but it is. And so I'm not going to talk in depth about skincare, except to say that it plumps up keratinocytes, which are the cells right at the bottom. When then the new cells that come up, they're the newest ones, and then they get fattened up in the subcutaneous layer. And as they come up, if you have sloughed off all the dead skin, you have lovely, plump, fresh cells. And the rose makes the keratinocytes fatter and plumper and healthier. But before we go, I want to talk about one more very important thing, because I am a pain specialist. I teach aromatherapists how to treat pain, and there's a tremendous clinical trial from Iran where they gave essential oil on just a couple of drops of oil on, you know, little iPads, you know, that you clean your face with. So a couple of drops of essential oil on an iPad, and they put it on a pillow 30 centimetres away from little children who had had operations, and they wanted to see how it affected their perception of pain and their sedation, because it is hypnotic. It does send you to sleep. It makes you go to sleep quicker and longer. And what they were able to see, in fact, I did write down the exact things here for you because it is phenomenal. Wait a minute. So the first assessment immediately upon arrival showed no difference between the groups, but post-operatively the Rose team always reported less pain. The difference between the two groups grows more dramatic with each reading. At 3 hours, the placebo group reported a mean pain reading of 2.6, but the Rose patients were faring better at 1.03. So just at 3 hours, they had half the perception of pain. By 12 hours, the placebo group was left standing with a mean pain score of 1.1, and the Rose having dropped to a pain score of 0.4. And then I've put here, incidentally, it's worth stating here that there was a good cross-section of different modalities of surgeries involved in this trial, from thoracic to gastric, which makes it harder to suggest whether the effects of the oil were happening because of a tonic effect on the gastric system. So what that means is, because it's laxative, we know that it works on the digestive system. So therefore, was it the effect on the digestive system, making the digestive system better on those people who had had tummy operations? Or was it purely the effect on perception on the brain? And that is just inhalation. That not only does the pain get better, but you know it feels better as well. So that your brain goes, yeah, it is less. It is less. It's moving further away from me, because it's overwhelming, isn't it? Imagine when you've got toothache. Can't think about anything else, can you? So, things like period pains. You've got to do your rose, your lavender and your clary sage. Now, if you are thinking, well, wow, but I don't know where to start with using it, come on over and subscribe to my website, and there will be a launch in the next few days of the essential oil, the Tongue of the Trees Recipe Hub, which is a database of, at the moment, 160 different recipes, but it will grow by at least 20 each month. And we go into exactly how to do it. So in the database, there is a rose section. So we've got a recipe for PMT, a recipe for menopause, a recipe for pain perception, blah, 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 blah. So that is a monthly subscription product. And yeah, I hope that helps you. Please do like and subscribe this video. Please put some comments below, because they really help me understand what you want me to make videos about. So did you understand? Did you find it helpful? Did you like it? Do you like my oils? Whatever you want to put.
You get your phone, you turn it this way up, and then there's a little red subscribe button. Turn it grey by clicking it, and then there's a little bell. Click that and press all at the bottom of your phone or tablet or computer. It will say you will receive all notifications, and then there's a little hand with a thumbs up. Click that, it'll turn it blue and it says added to your liked videos, and there will be comments, and if you want to, you can send a comment and say like hi's to Mum and Dad, like, and then the link to the next video will be in the description below underneath the video. So bye.